Hi everybody, happy Friday. I hope you have a great weekend. I picked a fun book and a fun poem that you might know, but I know we haven't read it together yet. It's called Where the Wild Things Are, and we have spent some time talking about imagination. And this is one of my favorite books about a wild imagination and the different places it can take you and the different adventures that you can go on when you have a good imagination. So work on that. Practice having imagination. It's a good thing. It's called Where the Wild Things Are, and the story and the pictures are by Maurice Sendak. There's a movie, Where the Wild Things Are, also. But it's pretty sad and a little bit scary. So if I were you, I would wait until I were a little bit older to watch it. Where the Wild Things Are. The night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind and another. We're going to stop and talk about mischief real quick. That means kind of making problems, but not in a mean way, just in an adventurous way that sometimes causes a problem. His mother called him Wild Thing, and Max said, "I'll eat you up." So he was sent to bed without anything to eat. So the mischief got him into a little bit of trouble. That very night in Max's room, a forest grew. And grew. And grew until his ceiling hung with vines and the walls became the world all around. And an ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max, and he sailed off through night and day. And in and out of weeks and almost over a year to where the wild things are. And when he came to the place where the wild things are, they roared their terrible roars, and they gnashed their terrible teeth, and they rolled their terrible eyes, and they showed their terrible claws, till Max said, "Be still," and tamed them with the magic trick of staring into all their yellow eyes without blinking once. And they were frightened and called him the most wild thing of all. And made him king of all the wild things. "And now," cried Max, "let the wild rumpus start." Now, rumpus is a nonsense word, but that word is so popular from this story that I think you'll be able to figure out what it means. There they are, just dancing up a storm under the moon. So the rumpus is like a giant dance party, actually. And it goes on and on. "Now stop," Max said, and sent the wild things off to bed without their supper. And Max, the king of all the wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all. Then all around him, from far away across the world, he smelled good things to eat. So he gave up being king of where the wild things are. But the wild things cried, "Oh, please don't go. We'll eat you up. We love you so." And Max said no. The wild things roared their terrible roars and gnashed their terrible teeth and rolled their terrible eyes and showed their terrible claws. But Max stepped into his private boat and waved goodbye. And sailed back over a year, and in and out of weeks, and through a day. And into the night of his very own room, where he found supper waiting for him. and it was still hot. So again, that really is a book about imagination, because if you think about it, what I've always thought when I read that story is that when he goes into his room, you know those Skippy John Jones books where the little chihuahua goes into his room and turns into all different crazy imaginary stories all over the world and with all different sorts of animals. And actually, he's not a chihuahua. He thinks he's a chihuahua, but he is a cat. And his mom is always telling him, stop acting like a dog, you're a cat. But every time he goes into his room or into his closet, he's transported to somewhere else. And I think that we have talked enough about that to realize that he's having imaginary adventures. And that's, I think, what Max is doing as well in this story. So it's fun to hear the imaginary stories that come when people make up these adventures in their minds, right? So that's where the wild things are. I found a little nonsensy poem that reminded me of where the wild things are. It's by Shel Silverstein, and it's called The Worst. When singing songs of scariness or hairiness, I feel obligated at this moment to remind you of the most ferocious beast of all, 3,000 pounds and 9 feet tall, the glurpy, slurpy Skakagrawl, who's standing right behind you. So there's a picture of what that might look like. The worst. So again, keep working on your imaginations, because they are one of the most powerful things that your brain can do, is to take you to different places to have different adventures. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you on Monday.